Hello and welcome to Krakenfold. Today we have the story from Norse mythology of creation and the end of gods. It is a special translation where I've combined a number of sources together, and hopefully you'll find that more enjoyable. If you do, please like and subscribe to the video, and then I'll do extra videos explaining how the translation came to be, because there'll be things you may not be familiar with. Anyway, I hope you're safe and well and enjoy this story. Welcome to Krakenfold.
The rider of the eight-legged steed had travelled north for some days before finding the road he was looking for. He followed it until he was standing in front of a set of gates, and whispered in his horse's ear. The horse took a few paces back, and then galloped thunderously towards the gate, leaping over it and entering the realm of hell. The rider dismounted, and carefully, calmly, walked downwards through darkening passages and tunnels, observing the ground where he trod. His desire for knowledge had brought him here. His wandering stopped when he found himself in an open cavern decorated like a hall. He looked around for a few moments and then lowered the hood of his blue cloak. The man was wearing a wide-brimmed hat. He had a long grey beard and his face just one eye. He pulled out a folded white cloth, opened it up and carefully chose 3 sticks from the many that were kept in it. He cast them to the ground, chanting the 10th runic spell, and magic filled the cavern's air with light. Odin prepared himself. In front of him the ground opened up and a body was revealed, a body without breath, without movement, a body that had been sent to hell a long time ago. In front of him had risen the body of a volva, a witch, a seeress. These types had many names now, and she was unable to resist Odin's magic. Odin chanted,
"In the name of Heimdall, watchman of the gods, and in the name of his sons, all men on earth, I ask that you hear me."
The volva spoke.
I have no choice but to speak to you, God of the slain, and I shall tell you the oldest stories of the gods and men from long ago.
Odin was ready to listen, and the volva continued.
I remember the Vanir, who were born so long ago and who raised me. There were 9 of us, the monstrous ones you would call us, and 9 troll women, and a seed from which the Yggdrasil would grow. And there were 9 realms that I knew of. The realm of the gods, the Aesir, which is named Asgard. The realm of the Wains, the Vanir, those which you know as monstrous beings, which is named Vanaheim. The realm where I now lay, the realm of the dishonoured dead called Hell. The realm of the light elves named Alfheim. The realm of men named Midgard. The realm of the frost monsters named Jotunheim. The realm of fire named Muspelheim. The realm of the ice and the dead, covered in a dark mist, which is called Niflheim. And then there is the realm of the dwarves and the dark elves. The dwarf named it Niflheim, and the dark elves Svartalfheim. Between these 9 realms, the great ash tree Yggdrasil grows, the largest and most beautiful ash tree there ever was, and it joins these realms together. The Yggdrasil has mighty roots so large they touch the realms, and in those realms those roots feed the wells. One root, the deepest root, grows towards hell. The well is called Hvergelmir, and the huge serpent Nithogger lives in these waters, gnawing on the root of the Yggdrasil. A second root grows towards Jotunheim and the well Mimispruner. This well belongs to Mimir. And a third root grows towards the Aesir-Vanir and the well of the Aesir, who represents fate. And there are serpents and snakes at the foot of the Yggdrasil. Among them are the largest, named Goin and Moin, Grabrak and Gravelurth, and Ofnir and Svafnir, all gnawing constantly at the tree's roots. And up within the branches of the tree runs Ratatosk the squirrel. He passes messages between the top of the tree, where the eagle is perched, viewing all, and down to the roots, down to Nithogger. However, Ratatosk should not be trusted, as he spreads lies between the two, provoking anger. On the highest branches of the tree there live 4 stags, Dain, Dvain, Dunir, and Durathor, and they eat the branches and leaves around them. And with all this the Yggdrasil suffers great evil that men do not see or know. The tree stands amongst its realms, and whilst its branches and roots are being eaten, its trunk rots.
The volva paused.
But before then, the oldest age was when Ymir lived, the first living thing. There were no waves, as there was no sea, and there were no sands, as there was no land. There was no sky, as there was no earth. An age passed, and in the north the mist realm of Niflheim came to be. There was no place colder, and it was hidden in a dark mist, and within it 11 poisonous rivers flowed. All this from a well at the bottom of the maelstrom called Hvergelmir. And at this time the fire realm of Muspelheim came to be, a world that was full of fire and light, and there has never been a place as hot. And in this hot and fiery realm there stands one who will defend these realms, one who existed before our gods, Surtur. A flaming sword is in his hand. He stays there watching until the end of the world, and then he will burn all worlds with fire, and all gods will fall before him.
The volva stopped, as though she was trying to recall something.
Between these realms of ice and fire, there was just a mighty yawning gap of nothingness, the Ginnunga Gap, and those 11 poisonous rivers flowed into the Ginnunga Gap, and over time, so much time, ice formed upon ice, and glaciers came to be. The ice to the north became covered in mist and hail and wind and rain, driven by the cold from Niflheim. But to the south, the heat and sparks from Muspelheim met the ice, and this heat made the air there warm and still, and melted the ice. Water formed, and within it life appeared in the shape of a man, huge in size, and that man was named Ymir, although the frost monsters would call him Hvergelmir. Ymir was the ancestor of all gods, all men, and all monsters. He was himself and his twin, but as one being. The melting ice revealed another creature, a cow that was so huge it cannot be imagined. And as the cow licked the salty ice, she produced milk from all 4 of her udders, on which Ymir suckled, rivers of milk that nourished Ymir. And as Ymir drank the milk, he grew, and the cow was named Uthumbla. And as Ymir continued to drink, Uthumbla continued to lick the salty ice, and from this ice the form of a man started to take shape. At the end of the first day, hair appeared from the ice. During the second day, a man's head was formed. And at the end of the third day, his body was complete, and the man came alive. He was named Bur, and he was the father of the Aesir. As time passed, Ymir slept, and whilst he slept, he developed a fever, and as he sweated from his armpits, he created 2 Jotuns, a male and a female, and between his legs, as his feet touched and writhed together, he created a 6-headed sun. These were the ancestors of all that would come. Bur took a wife from these newly created beings, and they had a son called Bor, who then took Bestla, the daughter of the Jotun Volthorn, and had 3 sons, Orthin, Vili, and Vi. As Bor's sons grew, they saw Muspelheim and Niflheim and knew they would not survive if they went to either. They felt like they had nowhere to go. They were trapped where there were no waves as there was no sea, and there was no sands as there was no land, and there was no sky as there was no earth. In need of somewhere to go, and in desperation of a way to create this, the 3 sons of Bor, Orthin, Vili and Vi, killed Ymir, and used his flesh and blood to create all the realms, blood to create the oceans and his bones to create the mountains. His teeth were used for boulders, and on the world of Midgard they used his eyelashes as a fence to contain the oceans around the land and mountains of this realm. His brains were used for clouds, and the skull was used for the sky. And around Midgard the sun was placed in the south and warmed the ground, and as it warmed the ground turned green and plants grew. The sun was placed upon a chariot, pulled by the horses Arvakar and Alsvithur from east to west, but they did not know where they would stop. The stars were yet to find their places in the sky, and the moon did not yet understand the power it had. The gods sat on their thrones and watched the sun and the moon and the stars, and then they gave names to the things that came to be: the hours, the day, noon and the night, the morning, the afternoon and the evening, and from this they could tell the time. Then the gods came to Ithavol, the field of deeds, and there they built their temples and shrines from wood that had grown. They filled their forges with ore from the ground and made workshops, and then they made tools and tongs and created treasures. The time to rest came, and the gods played games, gambled their gold, and were at peace. This was the golden age of the gods. But this age ended when 3 Jotun maids, the Norns, arrived from their world of Jotunheim. They looked after the roots of the Yggdrasil, but they also created the fates of all who lived through carving on those roots. Their names were Urthur, who represented the past, Rathandi, who represented the present, and Skulf, who represented the future, and they asked the gods for the race of dwarves to be made. The gods went back to their thrones and decided they would create the dwarves. The lord of the dwarves would be created from Brimir's blood and the maggots from the rotting limbs of Blaine, themselves all once of peace of Ymir. And thus Motsognir was created, the lord of the dwarves, and then the gods made Durin. And then they made many more dwarves, shaped like men, and Durin named them, for each had a purpose, although most of these have been lost in time.
The volva once more paused for a moment.
The 3 most powerful and passionate gods, Othin, Honir, and Lothor, then left Asgard to go back to Midgard. In their wandering, they found lying on the shore between the sand and the sea a log of ash and a log of elm, laying weak and without a purpose. The gods named these logs Askr and Embla, and they had no soul, no breath, no hair, no voice, no colour. Othin gave them their souls and breath. Honir gave them their heads and their brains. Lothor gave them blood, a heart, hair, and human faces. And so 2 humans were created from which all others came.
Odin nodded in agreement. The volva continued.
And there is a great ash tree I know. Its name is Yggdrasil, and it is the tallest tree you would ever see, kept green from drops of water dripping from earth's well. Dewdrops fall from its leaves as rain onto the ground, down into the valleys, and into a well that lies under the tree. 3 wise women live by that well. The Norns. Their names are Urther, Rathandi, and Skalth. They determine the fates of men, the laws of destiny, how long each man shall live, and how each life shall end.
The volva's tone then suddenly changed.
I remember the first war, and with it the first murder. It was I, Gulvig the Odin, who was impaled by a spear. They burned my body 3 times in Odin's hall, Valhall, and 3 times I was reborn. I was killed many times, and yet each time I would come back to life. The gods named me Heithi, and I would go to Midgard, and with my ability to prophesy and foretell what I knew, I practiced my witchcraft there. And those there that took pleasure in evil were happy to see me. Odin, it was you who let Gungnir loose, and when that spear flew so, the first war began. The Vanir knew war magic, and broke through the outer wall of Asgard, and trampled the earth, the valleys and the fields. The gods sat on their thrones, those sacred gods, and they decided on whether they would offer a tribute to stop my witchcraft and my undying ways, or whether they should seek revenge. The gods sat on their thrones, those sacred gods, and they had a choice of whether to let the war continue, for the Vanirs would forever remember this deceit, or to offer peace by giving them Odin's wife to marry. At the mention of this offer, Thor went into a rage, ready to fight. He believed that the gods had broken oaths and vows to even utter such things.
The volva's tone changed once more.
I know where Heimdall hid his ear, under the shadow cast by the branches of the Yggdrasil. I see a river that flows from the muddy waterfall where Odin's eye hides. Have you not learned enough yet, father of the slaughtered? Enough to put the world in order?
Odin chanted.
In the name of Heimdall, continue.
I was alone when you came up to me. You, Odin, the father of the slain, the terror of the gods, you looked at me in the eye. I asked, what do you want from me, Odin? Why do you seek me, Odin? I know where your eye is hidden, Odin. Odin, it is shining in the waters of the well of Mimir, and Mimir drinks from there every morning, the place where your eye drowns. Have you not learned enough yet, Odin? Enough to put the world in order?
In the name of Heimdall, continue.
You gave me gifts of jewellery, of rings, of necklaces, and in exchange I gave you wisdom and prophecy. I saw all the worlds through time with that wisdom and prophecy. I see the Valkyries come from far away, ready to ride to the home of the gods. Skov and Skogul, holding shields and riding next to each other. Gun, Hild, Gondel and Girskagul too. All the Valkyries are counted and ready to ride to Midgard as maidens of Odin. I see Baldur's blood-covered face laying in the fields. Odin's son knew his fate, as mistletoe had grown around him. Thor had made a spear from the mistletoe and had thrown it at Baldur, tricked into this by Loki, the plant being the only thing that could hurt Odin's son. But that night a brother of Baldur was born, another son of Odin, Voli. At just 1 night old, he took revenge. He had not had chance to clean or wash before he fought Hrothgar, before he placed him on the funeral pyre. And Frigg will weep, for Baldur will go to Valhall. Have you not learned enough yet, Odin? Enough to put the world in order?
In the name of Heimdall, continue.
Vali will then avenge Loki's actions and kill Loki's son Nafi. He will use Nafi's guts to bind Loki as his prisoner. I see that prisoner lying in a certain wood, the liar himself, Loki. There beside him sits Sigyn, his wife. Although she is not happy with her husband, she will release him from those bonds. Have you not learned enough yet, Odin? Enough to put the world in order?
In the name of Heimdall, continue.
To the east, The river Sylph runs through the valleys of poison, full of swords and daggers. And to the north of the dark valleys there stands 2 golden halls for the ancestors of Sindri and Ocklenir, and besides these a beer hall for the Jotun-Brimir. And far from the sun, in Nastron, there stands one hall built on corpses. Its door faces north. Poison drips through gaps in its roof and down through the smoke vents, and serpents slither around the walls, wanting to go inside. And wading through these rivers were bad men, murderers, traitors, backstabbers and thieves, and there Nithhogger sucked the blood from those who have died, and then crushed their bones in his jaws. Have you not learned enough yet, Odin? Enough to put the world in order?
Odin's voice was getting louder.
In the name of Heimdall, continue.
In the east is Ironwood, where an old Jotun lives, her name Angelbother, and she is the mother of Fenrir, the wolf whose father is Loki. There she raised her brood from Fenrir's blood, and within this brood are the wolves who will bite the moon and steal the sun from the sky, Skoll and his sister Hati. He will feed on the flesh of the corpses, turning the home of the gods red with the blood of his feast. There the sun will turn black, and the mightiest of storms will come, and winter will last 3 years. Have you not learned enough yet, Odin? Enough to put the world in order?
In the name of Heimdall, continue.
Egther, the happiest of the Jotun, sits on a burial mound playing his harp, whilst Fjalla, the rooster, sings along with him from his roost in Birdwood, and at Asgarth the rooster Gollingambi, or Goldencomb, crows, waking the men who fight for the lord of the battle, for you, Odin. And below the earth a dirty red rooster sings in the halls of hell. Standing before the doors of hell, Fenrir howls, and howls so very loudly, a terrible howl. He will break his chains and run free all the way to Ragnarok, and there will be a fight, and the gods' lives are fated too. I know much wisdom, and I can see into the future. Brothers will fight brothers, and brothers will kill brothers, and cousins will not be loyal either in these fights. The days left on earth will become much tougher to bear, much harder to get through. There will be no honour, and women will sleep with other men freely. It will be a time for axes, a time for swords, a time for storms. It will be the time of the wolves. There will be winds and waves, and the world will be swallowed up by the sea, and there will be no good men left alive. It is at this time the sons of Mimir will have their fun. Heimdall will hold a yellow horn high and blow it, blasting a sound so loud that Yggdrasil will shake, and all of the lands to hell will quake. And at this time the gods' fates are realized, and you, Odin, will speak with Mimir's head, but it is of no consequence. The ancestors of Surtur will slay you soon enough. Yggdrasil will shake, and its branches will tremble when the Vanir, us monsters, are let loose on it. Standing before the doors of Nipelia, Garma howls, and howls so very loudly a terrible howl. He will break his chains and run free, and all the way to Ragnarok. There will be a fight, and gods' lives are fated too. I know much wisdom, and I can see into the future. Herm will come from the east carrying a shield held high. The Mythgarth serpent, angry, writhes around, creating waves, making the sea mad. The Jotun Hlasleg will take the form of an eagle, flying, crying with excitement, and splitting corpses of men and gods with its pale beak. And then the Jotun ship Naglfar is released. Made from human fingernails, it will sail from the east with Loki at the helm, captain of the vessel that has the Jotuns of Muspelheim on board, with his son Fenrir the wolf alongside. What news of the gods? What news of the elves? Those monstrous beings of Jotunheim are roaring, the gods of the Aesir are in council, and the dwarves hide in the mountains, trembling in fear behind their stone doors. Have you not learned enough yet, Odin? Enough to put the world in order?
In the name of Heimdall, continue.
And from the south Surtur will come, holding his sword that is so bright, so hot, and with the swing of that sword the sky will divide, the mountains will collapse, the women Jotun and the trolls will fall, and the men will walk the roads to hell. Loki leads the charge against the gods, and Heimdall, the first protector, clashes with him. They both fight to the death, and they both lay slain. Frigg will now suffer more sorrow and loss as Odin goes to fight Fenrir, and Freya goes to fight Surtur after slaying the Jotun belly. Freya is no match for Surtur's flaming blade, and he falls in the duel. Odin, with Gungnir in his hand, his spear that will always hit its target, rides Sleipnir, the best of steeds, towards Fenrir. The speed of his eight-legged mount so fast, but Fenrir, whose jaws open so wide, the upper touches the top of the sky and the lower touches the ground, lunges at Odin. His spear does not kill the wolf, and Odin's fate is sealed, swallowed in the wolf's gaping jaws. But Vithar, the great son of Odin, seeks to avenge his father's death. Fenrir's mouth is foaming with rage, and the blood of Odin drips from it. Vithar steps on the wolf's lower jaw with his boots made from the leather of men's shoes, and holds Fenrir's top jaw up with his left arm. He thrusts his sword down Fenrir's throat with his right. The sword reaches the heart, and with a twist of the hand the wolf is dead. His father is avenged. And now another of Odin's sons comes to fight the Mythgar serpent. He is the son of Jord, the Earth's child, and his name is Thor. And he has Mjolnir, the hammer that can protect Midgard. The Midgard serpent looks up out of the sea, his head in the sky, and spits venom across the land at Thor, who strikes the serpent with his hammer, and the serpent falls. Thor takes just 9 more steps before he falls to the ground, struck down by the venomous fumes of the honourless serpent, dead. All men must flee Midgard, for now there is nowhere to hide. The sun turns black and the sea swallows the earth. Stars fall from the sky and Yggdrasil starts to burn, and flames reach across the skies from Surtur's sword as all the realms burn. The mightiest of storms start to grow, and a winter 3 years long begins. Standing before the doors of Nipelia, Garner howls, and howls so very loudly a terrible howl. He will break his chains and run free. Garnier runs towards Tyr. He lunges as Tyr strikes his sword. Both slay each other in the clash, and both are dead. I know much wisdom, and I can see into the future. The gods' futures are fated, and this is a dark day for them. But when Surtur's sword stops burning the earth, it will rise a second time from the sea, covered in green, with waves against the shore, waterfalls creating rivers flowing to the sea, and where eagles are flying, catching fish beneath the cliffs at the foot of the mountains. The Aesir will meet again on Rithavel, the fields of deeds, and amongst golden tables will talk of what has been, the great events of Ragnarok and the fight with the Midgard serpent. The fields will grow and give food without the need to work them, and there will be no sickness, and Baldur and his brother Hothor will come back and live in Odin's Hall of the Slain in peace. Vali and Vithar, Honir and Thor's sons, Morthi and Magni, will come back and inherit Mjolnir. The gods will keep the bones of the Midgard serpent and recount the wisdom of Odin and his runes. There they will find one more time to rest, to play the games, and to gamble gold, as so long ago before them. Have you not learned enough yet, Odin? Enough to put the world in order?
In the name of Heimdall, continue.
Then Hornir will speak forth his prophecies, and the 2 sons of Odin, the 2 brothers, will inhabit Vinheim. Have you not learned enough yet, Odin? Enough to put the world in order?
In the name of Heimdall, continue.
2 humans will remain, Lithrasir and Lif, and live in Hothmir's forest, living off the morning dew, and some of your finest warriors, the Einherjar, will survive.
The volva paused. Her voice seemed to be weakening.
I see a hall, standing there on a mountain, a Gimli, more beautiful than sunlight, and thatched with gold. There our kings, our leaders, our rulers will dwell. They will be good men, and they will enjoy happiness throughout their lives whilst they live there.
And then the volva spoke her final words.
Then the dark dragon will come flying down from the dark mountains. That glistening serpent Nithogger. He will bear corpses on his wings as he flies over that valley. I must go now.
Cold air blew around the cavern. Dust and earth covered the volva's body as she sunk back into the ground from where she came. The old man paused, gathered his runes, and turned towards the way he had come. He raised the hood of his cloak to hide his face, his beard, his eye, for he was the god of the slain, and he wanted to keep the world in order. But Ragnarok was coming.